in the system, but will know how it's working and how it's not. Simon Kidwell, head teacher at Hertford Manor Primary School and Nursery in Cheshire, is on the line. Good morning.
Good morning.
What picture are you seeing? Are you seeing an increase?
Yes, I've been a head teacher for 20 years and I've noticed there's been a large increase, and that's supported by the National Audit Office report, where we've seen an increase of 140%. And I think particularly, Emma, it's been around the increase in the number of children with speech and language and communication difficulties, with behaviour needs and with autistic needs as well. So that's where the increase is being seen, and that's supported by the
A
report.
bit later in the programme, we're going to get into why on that. But if I could ask for the time we have for you to tell us a bit about what you are able to do to support those children or not.
Well, so in terms of children, we have to provide the first tranche of funding for children with needs. So that's £6,000 out in from the school budget. We then give them additional support, often from a teaching assistant, and employing and finding those skilled teaching assistants is becoming increasingly more difficult as teaching assistants are leaving our schools to work in better paid jobs as well. We've got an excellent special needs coordinator in our school who's really good at working with the parents and working with local authority to secure additional funding, but we do have a limit in the resource that we have, and we've seen this large increase in special needs pupils has been not matched by the increase in funding, even though we have to say the previous government did invest a lot in special needs, but it's just not keeping pace.
So what happens if you can't support? Where do the children, what do they do? What do you do?
Well, there's special schools, but in our local area. But we've had some children where they've said that children need to go to special school, but there's not been any space. So we then have to go and think very carefully and work hard to make sure we're providing the best we can with our resource. But we know that some children, their needs will be better met in a specialist provision with specialist trained staff, with specialist school facilities.
And is that what you're hoping for from this new government? You know, the education secretary hasn't, she knows the scale of the problem, but there isn't a clear solution being put forward at this point.
I mean, the costs involved are eye-watering. I think what I'd like to see from new governments is early intervention. I think what the failing of the system has been is we've seen a 40% reduction in health visitors since 2015, and that has meant we've not been able to identify children's needs early and work with families. So we've seen children coming into our nursery and our early years department with significant speech and language delay. So that's something I'd like them to do. And also, I think we've seen a real gap in the support for families with the reduction in Sure Start provision. That's been something which we've seen over a decade, where families were getting support for needs and for other aspects of making sure we had early intervention. So I think those two things, I think we've got to intervene earlier rather than just putting a sticking plaster on the problem.
Simon Kidwell, head teacher at Hertford Manor Primary School and Nursery in Cheshire. Thank you. Got a message here from one of our listeners saying this system's been